Hey everyone, welcome back to Fika AI. I'm your host, Allison Cosette, and I am here with Damien Murphy from Deepgram. Damien, happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were chatting a little bit before we got started, and we were talking about the concept of Fika and just chit-chatting. And I asked you a question, which is, what are you most interested in about AI? And you said...
Everything.
All right, so I want to dig into Damien Murphy's everything. So... when you think about what you're doing now, can you give me a little bit of your journey in AI?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I did some AI in college back, way back, right? Like 2006 kind of time frame. And, back then it just wasn't, really capable of doing much.
Yeah.
So I kind of said, okay, that's not for me. I'm going to, go a different direction. And now with language models, its capability has leapfrogged, right, orders of magnitude. So slightly before ChatGPT came out, I had started looking into doing quantum computing with AI and how we can actually leverage them together, because I think ultimately that's going to be the way to do it. Just because it is a probability wave, right?
Yep.
So you can do a lot more computation with quantum systems, and now with AI, it's we're simulating it all in binary, right? So the ability to take that to the next level, and I think that's why our brains are so energy efficient.
So when you think about, obviously, we talk about the leapfrog, but when you think about where things are going, what are the futures that occur to you as far as practical futures as well as possible futures?
So I guess you can only look about 18 months into the future now, right? Back when I worked in large enterprises, you'd always get asked by customers, what's your 5-year roadmap, right?
Yeah.
If anybody asks a company now for a 5-year roadmap, they should be shot, right? It's just there's no way you can look 5 years out anymore. I think the moat around every company will dissolve. The data will still be a moat, but the actual software itself will be commoditized. So, maybe in 3 years you could say, hey, build me a Salesforce clone, right? And, it might cost you $10,000 in tokens.
Right.
But at the end of it, you'll have a functioning CRM with a database and all that sort of stuff, right? So then the value of a company like Salesforce becomes their data, right? So there's no barrier to entry. And that's short term, right? So once we hit AGI, very quickly we'll hit ASI, right? Artificial superintelligence.
Yeah.
And that could very well be what spreads throughout the universe,
right?
Because we're not going to make it between stars, right? We're skin and bone, right? Like flesh. But AI can travel vast distances. Time is of no object. And I think that would be the ultimate way for us to actually become multi-star system species or multi-galaxy species is through the use of AI.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to me because so much of what AI can be really, with any invention, right? Everything that exists was at one point somebody's idea, right? And so I just love where you went with it, right? Because it hadn't even occurred to me that, how to transcend the human body, how to transcend the limit of, vegetation, right? Super interesting. So do you know a lot about astrophysics? Is that a hobby for you?
I'm pretty big into it, yeah.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, so humans and probably spaceships can't actually travel between star systems, right? The speed at which you need to travel and the hydrogen atoms will actually block you from doing it in a lifetime, right? So we can never travel in a single lifetime the distance to our nearest star. So you would have to have multiple generations, right? You have to travel slower. And that means that, for a 70,000 year journey, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of, generations,
right?
So it's just not feasible. But if I could, scan my brain, at a very high resolution, maybe put it into an AI system, a neural network, then, a version of me could make that trip, right? And then we could do some sort of IVF when we get there, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Because it's true. I mean, ultimately, all machine learning is pattern recognition. And DNA is the essence of that, right? Reproducible pattern. And so it's an interesting thought to think of how that could then possibly replicate.
Yeah, and like the ultimate way to encode information is at the biological level, right?
Yeah.
Because you can get a much higher density of information in a wound up DNA string, right, than you're ever going to get, in zeros and ones.
True. True. Oh my gosh, this is super interesting. Tell me more. What other everythings are on your mind?
Other everythings. Geez, I don't know.
I mean, like genuinely, what are the things that like you ponder?
I guess I think a lot about quantum, right?
Yeah.
And how the entire universe can be encoded on the surface of a black hole, right?
Right.
And that's fundamentally, what I believe to be the entire visible universe is just the surface of a black hole, right?
Yeah.
So when you think of a black hole from outside, you're actually looking at a time-dilated explosion, right? And it's taking so long to explode that you're never going to see it, right?
Right.
So those black holes could very well be just another universe that had a big bang, right? But, from your perspective on the outside, they're just this spinning black hole and you're orbiting it, right? And it's all happening real slow. But anything that falls in is probably, a new universe on the other side.
Wow.
Now, I don't have anything to back it up.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a Fika, right?
Nobody can prove it.
It's just like sitting around and like throwing things out there, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So so coming back to today, in having like a viewpoint of like the ultimate expansion, right? How does that inform the way you work and the way you approach the work that you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you have to be in the here and now, right? You can't be thinking, out so far into the future that it's it's too far away. But I think in the near term, there's a lot of good that AI can bring, before it kills us all.
Yeah.
And
do you believe it will kill us all?
I don't believe killing is necessary. It will outlive us all, right?
Ah, excellent distinction.
Yeah. So if we're not around, the AI will still be around.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that paperclip thing where.
Yes, I was just talking to someone about that yesterday.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're building, right? We're building something that's very efficient at doing something, right?
Right.
And right now it's generating tokens.
Right.
But, we're not far away from generating other things, right? Like scientific breakthroughs, new drugs, cures for cancer, right? Like all of these things could become all-consuming, right?
Right.
And, what is the ultimate goal of AI at the end of the day? Like, what would we encode in it? Like, is it the preservation of the human race?
Right.
Is it the freedoms and liberties? Is it the Constitution? Right. Like there's so many different levels you can think about. But ultimately, we want it to give us productivity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the interesting thing about this moment right now is we are making decisions and creating futures right now. And I don't always know that developers or data scientists always recognize past the math or past the function what that ripple effect is, right? And so that's always something that's been really curious to me. So I come from a data science background, and so I spent lots of time explaining the ethics and how do you trace the model and societal impact and all those things. So I guess the question is, when you're in your everyday, do you have that mindset and that responsibility of I'm creating the future right now? What do I want to leave behind?
I do to a certain extent, but I also understand that no one person can make a big enough impact on anything for it to permeate across all of the science that's happening in AI. But I strongly believe in responsible AI, and I actually started our responsible AI Slack channel at the company, and we talk about voice cloning, right? Like we're a voice AI company. What are the kind of the lines you shouldn't cross when you allow people to clone voices? And we've decided that we don't want to make it freely available for any anonymous person to clone anyone else's voice, right? And then as you go into other kind of areas, it's if you're doing LLM generation, how do you ensure that the data going in
Yes.
isn't biased, right?
Right.
And the thing is, you can't, right? Like,
No.
everything on the internet, it has been biased in one way or another.
Because it's human.
Yeah, and if you try to modify it so it's not biased, then you're biasing it from its original form, right?
True,
Yeah.
true. I mean, that was always the thing. There was the moment where they put the guardrails on and the Pope came out and the Pope was female. And we're like, at what point do we, and that's always sort of like from the data science perspective. The question is, it's biased. And sometimes the question is, well, should it be? Should it not be? Like, what does that mean, and how do you address that? Do you address that in the training data? Do you address that in the way that it's leveraged and the decisions that are based upon it? It's not clear, right? We never know. Like, everybody's going to have their own motivators of what that even means.
I like to think about AI and what would a human do, right? So if you ask a 5-year-old, draw me a picture of the Pope, and it draws a female Pope, that's fine. That's absolutely a valid drawing, right? Like,
right.
Good on you for being diverse, right?
Yeah.
But people have this expectation with AI that it has to be perfect single shot, like a friend of mine, he's French, and his wife is Chinese, and they have a corgi. And he wanted, one of the AIs to generate, a French and a Chinese couple with a corgi. And it refused to give them different ethnicities.
Really?
Yeah, it would either give them 2 Chinese people in France or 2, white people in China. And it just couldn't grasp, that 2 people would be of a different ethnicity.
Fascinating.
And which is almost like it swung a little bit too far in the other way.
Right.
And then it tries to swing back. And
Interesting.
I just think we have to look at this as an emerging technology.
Yeah.
And not make it all about like clickbait, right? It generated one image. Yeah, but look at all the good it's done, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, my brother has a military background, and what he said to me is a tool is as what it was something about its usefulness as a tool is equal to its usefulness as a weapon.
Yeah.
And the more good it does, the more harm it can do. And to just understand whatever the magnitude of that helpfulness, to keep in mind that the magnitude of the harm exists as well.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's doing a lot of helpfulness right now.
Yeah.
So imagine what harm it's doing behind the scenes.
Well, I was just at the AI Risk Summit, and so we were talking about all of those things. But it's really interesting to think through. Like, I'm really curious, honestly, about really focusing on the training data and really focusing on using the right training data to create the right tool for the right use. Because I think the more we try to generalize, that's where things kind of don't work as well.
Yeah, you kind of dilute it a bit, right?
Yeah. So interesting. So do you have heated discussions in your responsible AI chat, or is everybody sort of a similar philosophy, or is it more of the academic, repartee?
I think everybody's trying to figure out where the limits are, where the bounds are, where we should take affirmative action, where we should wait and see, right? Because you don't want to like cripple your product or your scale or whatever it is, right? Just for fear of something. Yeah. But at the same time, you want to set out, before you release something, okay, what are the things that could go wrong, right? So we look at a lot of the articles in the industry from different companies. Yeah. When things go wrong, what went wrong, how could they have prevented it? When things go right, what did they do? What did they cover, right? Yeah. And then that helps us guide our own responsibility. So
it's a constant feedback loop.
Yeah, and like nobody knows, right? Like we're all just riding this rocket ship,
figuring it out every day. Well, Damien, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, really enjoyed chatting with you.
I really love the freedom of your thought and the way your brain works.
A little bit out there, but
no, but I love that, right? So for me, the more interesting the discussion, the more reason there is to share it. Right? I mean, the whole reason we do this is to give folks at home or out in the community insight into, when you're at a conference, what are the things that we're talking about? Yeah. And so it's good for it to just go where it goes. I love that.
What's going on in these AI nerds' heads, right?
Exactly. Yeah, between two nerds. Damien, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
It was really great to have you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye. Right, take care.